Hey, tired listener, today we're going to open our eyes inside a medieval castle. You are a wealthy woman. Congratulations. But calm down. This doesn't mean comfort, and it certainly doesn't mean freedom. It means your clothes are heavy, your meals are lukewarm, and your life is one grand, musty-smelling theatre. On this unhurried tour of the Middle Ages, you will discover the daily reality of the female elite. That is, a lot of pomp, very little autonomy, and a stunning number of fabric layers per square inch of your body. Before diving into this glorious day, full of questionable glamour, get settled, pretend you're comfortable, and before sleep arrives or the Middle Ages knock you out, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel. There's always a luxurious life like this waiting for you here, and tell me where you are right now and what time boredom decided to strike. And of course, click that hype button. It helps the video reach more people who also love a boring story for sleep. Now, turn off the lights. Breathe deep. The Middle Ages will take care of the rest. You wake up in a bed of hard wood, dressed in as much luxury as the century permits. The mattress is stuffed with straw and feathers. The linen sheets have seen better days, and you hold on to the hope that the bedbugs went to sleep first. The thick curtains around the canopy block the wind, but they efficiently trap the smell of smoke, night sweat, and expired incense. The mattress sags in preformed hollows before you even lie down. Your pillow feels like it's stuffed with damp oats, and the sheet, a mixture of linen and ceremonial dust. The first sensation of the day isn't peace. It's a stuffy, oppressive heat rising from your own skin, as if the room had been hermetically sealed for 3 centuries, and you were its inaugural mummy. Your maid enters in silence. She lifts one of the heavy curtains with the care of someone releasing a trapped spirit, and wishes you good day without looking you in the eyes. This isn't out of respect, but because you are likely disheveled and smell faintly of vinegar. The sun cuts through the narrow window slit, but it doesn't warm much. You feel your bones, the nodes of your knuckles, and the slight suspicion that sleeping with your rings on was not a good idea. You are noble, rich, respected, and still, you start the day wondering if you'll manage to take a single deep breath amidst so much fabric, incense, and smoke. It feels as if the castle has decided that your lungs too require training. Your face is still creased from sleep, but you must immediately face the first challenge of the day, pretending to be clean. Your maid enters carrying a metal basin filled with still water, probably the same water from yesterday. She places it on the bench with the solemnity of someone carrying a sacred elixir. But don't be fooled. That liquid is more mysterious than it is hygienic. You dip a small cloth, one that already smells of must and dried roses, and pass it over your face with the same energy as someone wiping a window on a rainy day. You scrub your forehead, your neck, your cheeks. There. Now you can proclaim with all medieval pomp, "I have washed." A full bath. Oh, my dear, only on truly special, epic occasions, like a feast, a wedding, or when the smell of your body starts attracting flies faster than forgotten fish on the docks. Until then, it's the damp cloth and a look of, "My, how refreshed I am." You pick up a glass vial that glitters as if it were a rare jewel. Inside, a thick, dark liquid that supposedly smells of flowers. You dab it on your wrist, behind your ear, and feel the perfume rise like a cloud of doubt. It's a mixture of lavender and regret, with subtle notes of expired incense. But the good part is that it masks the lingering smell of vinegar in your hair. Yes, vinegar, because that's what you rinsed your strands with yesterday, or was it the day before? It doesn't matter. The sharp scent is still there. They said it helps keep the scalp clean, and you believed it. Mostly because the alternative is letting lice take permanent possession of your capillary territory. Your maid begins to detangle your hair with a wooden comb. The sensation is akin to having your soul ripped out through the nape of your neck. Each pull is a sharp reminder that you were born with privileges and with giant knots in your head. While she combs, you observe the bronze mirror. The reflection is blurry, distorted, It looks more like a memory than an image, but that's fine. In the Middle Ages, the important thing isn't to look pretty, it's to look rich, and you are exuding exactly that. Wealth, with a light touch of warm vinegar. You try to maintain your posture as a ribbon is tied tightly around your hair. She pulls. You hold your sigh. A noblewoman does not groan from capillary pain. She simply accepts. To finish, your maid places a small sachet of dried herbs inside your linen cap, believing it wards off bad smells. In practice, it's like walking around with a salad tied to your forehead, but the scent is pleasant, and you need every possible advantage to endure the rest of the day. Teeth? Well, you rub them with a dry cloth, and maybe a little wine. The toothbrush is still a thing of the distant future, and you don't have time to lament this. Just scrub, spit, and move on. Done. Another hygiene ritual successfully completed. You dab that white powder on your face, the one made from dubious minerals. It helps to lighten the skin. In truth, it just makes you look like raw bread dough, but it's the fashion, and you don't want to look rebellious. Rebellion, in your case, turns into vicious gossip in 10 minutes. Now you take a deep breath. The air is still heavy, and the room smells of damp cloth, scented vinegar, and religious dust. But that's just how it is. This is the aroma of nobility. You stand up. Your back aches, your scalp pulls, and your teeth still taste like the past. But you are officially ready. Congratulations, you survived the morning ritual. No glamour, no freshness, but with all the pomp the Middle Ages allowed. The smell? Better to pretend it's fashion. You're still cold from the still water of the hygiene ritual, but you must already face the next torture of the day, getting dressed. And it's not just putting on clothes. It is almost a choreography of war. Each layer of fabric is a battle waged against common sense and gravity. It begins with a linen shift that clings to the skin like wet paper. It has a tight collar, long sleeves, and all the charm of a monastery curtain. You raise your arms with effort. The fabric scratches a little. This is normal. Medieval clothes weren't made for comfort. They were made to prove that you don't need to use your hands for anything other than holding a rosary or adjusting your sleeve. And if you dare complain, relax. There's more fabric coming on top. Over the shift comes the main dress. It is heavy, dense, an uncomfortable hug from the nobility. It's fitted in the bust, wide at the hem, and requires assistance to be worn. Alone, you couldn't even close half the laces. The maid pulls the ties with the strength of someone mooring a ship. You hold your breath. If breathing is a luxury, that's fine. You're from the elite. Luxury is what you have in spades. The next piece might be a surcoat. The richest ladies love to complicate their outfits with an extra layer, because the more useless fabric, the more status, and of course the more heat. But no one speaks of that. This surcoat has exaggerated sleeves that drag on the floor and collect castle dust like portable vacuums. But it's beautiful, and in the Middle Ages, being beautiful is more important than feeling your arms. Now comes the belt. Not a modern belt, clearly. This one is a band of leather with a bronze buckle, adorned with embroidery and small dangling trinkets. If you were the mistress of the house, you'd be dangling a set of keys from your hip, the official symbol of one who commands even the pantry. But since you're just the rich daughter in training, you only get to carry a few cloth pouches, and if you're lucky, a small bronze mirror. And the shoes? Ah, the shoes. 2 plaques of hard leather shaped with the affection of someone who has never worn a pair. They have no cushioned sole, no modern laces, just rigidity and the promise of future calluses. You shove your foot in with effort. They pinch, they get hot. If you walk too much, they hurt. But you are a lady, and a lady does not complain about her shoes. She simply glides, or tries to, and maintains an expression of perfect comfort, even if every step is a negotiation with fate. You are technically dressed now, but the adornments are still missing. Your maid brings a linen cap that must cover most of your hair, because showing too much is considered a lack of decorum. The cap is fastened with pins that poke your scalp, as if they're asking uncomfortable questions. If you were already married, you'd also have to put on a veil, an extra piece of cloth just to prove you're no longer on the market. But as you're single, you just have the cap, tight, firm and uncomfortable, the kind that pulls your earring every time you move your head. You breathe deep and disguise the discomfort. Being vain is acceptable, being irritated is not. You also put on a necklace with a pendant. It's cold and metallic, not as heavy as it looks, but uncomfortable enough to remind you that ostentation never comes free. But it shines. And in your world, shine is a sign you're doing everything right. As you look in the bronze mirror, the one that never shows your face properly, you try to imagine how others will see you today. Composed, perhaps, and a little breathless. Because with 4 layers of clothing, it's hard to even remember how to take a deep breath. The most curious part is that no one will comment. None of the other ladies will look at you and say, "My, what uncomfortable garments." They are also suffocating under their own dresses. But it's part of the act, part of the social theater where everyone pretends to be well-dressed and no one admits that what they really want is to be in their nightgown all day. You give the belt one last adjustment, take a half breath, and mentally thank goodness it's not winter yet. Because in winter, all of this comes with a bonus, more wool. Now you are ready, or as close to it as the Middle Ages allows. To remain standing, breathe with control, and not trip on your own sleeves is half the battle. The day hasn't even properly started, and you're already tired. But a lady doesn't rest. She just changes rooms. And with your stomach reminding you it exists, you prepare for the next essential activity, trying to chew something without cracking a tooth. You are already fully dressed, laced up, suffocated, and partially numbed by the layers of fabric and the lack of natural ventilation. But the body demands not dignity. That was left behind when you put on the 3rd layer of clothing. It demands food, or something to fill the stomach's void and distract from the fact that there are still about 12 hours until your next peaceful sigh. You descend with careful steps, trying not to trip on the hem of your dress or your own thoughts. The stone stairs are cold, and the sound of your hard leather shoes, so rigid they're almost wood, echoes like an announcement of noble hunger. In the common hall, the table awaits you. It's not a banquet, but it's not misery either. White bread, butter, honey, boiled eggs, dried fruits, and a piece of aged cheese that could serve as a weapon in case of invasion. All washed down with a mug of weak ale or watered-down wine, because pure water is still an urban legend. They call this the first meal. You call it a ritual to remember that being rich means eating better than others, but still chewing things drier than your morning mood. You sit, or rather, you position yourself. Because sitting in this dress requires 3 adjustments, 2 tugs of fabric, and the collaboration of gravity. It's not about hiding your ankles. No one will see anything down there. It's about not looking like a ball of fabric collapsing onto the chair. Before you rests a piece of bread. It is white, an absolute luxury, since only the rich could afford flour sifted multiple times. But hold on, white doesn't mean fluffy. It's not brioche, not a croissant, and definitely nothing like the roll from the corner bakery. It's medieval bread, dense, heavy, and soft, only when compared to the rye brick the peasant is chewing outside. You break it apart with effort. It's not quite a weapon of war, but it could work as a paperweight. Still, it rests on a silver plate, because the contrast between dry dough and gleaming metal is what defines luxury here. Beside it, a goblet of weak ale. Yes, ale before 8 a.m. But don't get excited. It's light, almost a barley infusion. It's what you drink because water, let's just say, doesn't inspire much confidence. You dip the bread in the ale, hoping it will soften. It absorbs a little, but it still demands effort from your jaw. In the end, the meal isn't about pleasure. It's about remembering that even the rich start the day chewing things that wouldn't be successful even in a bus station bakery. At the other end of the table, a servant places a piece of cheese. It's cured, hard, the kind that seems to have crossed generations just waiting to be chewed. You stare at it. It remains firm, showing no hurry to be eaten. Even so, you cut a small piece because it's a valued food. Even hard, even suspicious, it's still a symbol of abundance or stubbornness. You chew it with the delicacy of someone who knows any sudden movement could lead to a dental consultation, probably with a blacksmith. Between bites, you observe the room. The walls are stone, covered with heavy tapestries that try to block the cold and the monotony. In the corner, a pitcher with dried flowers, very dried, almost fossilized, but still decorative. The ambient sound is the scratching of knives on metal plates, the murmur of servants, and the light rustle of sleeves on tables. Everything seems planned to look natural, and everything is, in fact, awkward. You take another sip of the ale. It's lukewarm, slightly acidic, and tastes like barley with responsibilities. Nothing to cheer you up, but nothing to kill you either, which by the era's standards is a victory. You look at the bread again. It hasn't changed. Still hard, still part of the landscape. You eat another piece, this time with resignation. It's at this moment you feel your stomach begin to yield, not exactly satisfied, but occupied. And that's enough to continue the day. Your body is still adapting to the weight of the clothes, the smell of vinegar in your hair, and the idea that this was just the beginning of the journey. But at least now there is bread in you, or what's left of it. You wipe your lips with a cloth, adjust the cap that's tighter than it should be, and take a deep breath as if rehearsing patience. With your stomach half convinced it's been fed, you get up from the table. Or try to, because leaving the chair with all these clothes is almost a silent military operation. Once more, you adjust the sleeves, the skirts, the belt with its keys, and the necklace. Everything must be in its place, even if you no longer have the patience for any of it. But patience isn't optional. It's part of the uniform. And as the day still promises long hours of controlled occupation, you prepare for the next ritual, pretending that embroidery is relaxing. You've eaten hard bread, survived the morning ale, and won the fight against medieval fabrics. And now, after so much excitement, before it's even noon, you are ready for what they call feminine entertainment. Embroidery. Yes, needle, thread, and cloth. The holy trinity of aristocratic boredom. You are led to a reserved space near the window, the one that barely opens, but lets in just enough light to punish your retinas. On the floor, a rug embroidered by some other bored soul a few generations ago. And beside you, a cushion that promises comfort, but in practice feels more like a bag of cloth, reorganized with ill will. Your maid brings the wooden embroidery hoop, carefully mounted with the stretched fabric. It's a pale rectangle, anxiously awaiting hundreds of tiny, colorful stitches that will form a pastoral scene no one will ever really look at up close. But it still needs to look meticulously executed, because that's what is expected of you. Patience, delicacy, and good taste, all at the same time, and without sneezing. You thread the needle with the concentration of someone trying to push a thread through a keyhole in the dark. You don't get it on the first try, nor the second. On the third attempt, the thread finally passes. You almost celebrate, but you remember that too much emotion ages the skin. The first stitch is made, a second, then a third. And so begins the journey that will consume the next 3 hours of your life, or until your eyes beg for mercy, whichever comes first. Around you, other women of the house also embroider. Some are making flowers, others depict biblical scenes, and one over in the corner seems to be just faking it. Her needle paused, staring into the void like someone who has had a spiritual revelation of pure tedium. You focus on your scene, a stag in a flowery field, because nothing better represents a life of confinement than a free animal that never actually existed around here. Each stitch requires coordination, steadiness, and patience. But it's also a way to show you know your place. Because embroidery in this era isn't just a pastime, it's a resume. Every well-made stitch increases your value as a lady, and every mistake, well, you cover it with another flower and pretend it was artistic intent. From time to time, you lift your head and observe the room. Silence reigns. Occasionally someone comments on how the blue wool has faded a bit, and this sparks an entire debate about dyes, types of thread, and the eternal drama of pigment that fades in the sun. Explosive topics, so to speak. You listen but don't participate. You're too busy trying to sew the ear on a stag without making it look like a dragon. Your neck begins to ache. You shift position. Your back complains. You shift again. The cushion slips. You accept the discomfort as part of the process. After about 30 minutes that felt like 3 days, your hand starts to tingle, but you can't stop. After all, you're almost finished with the border of the grass, and the embroidery is only done when all the parts are complete, just like your reputation. Meanwhile, your mind wanders. You think about your childhood, about how you thought being a noblewoman would be glamorous, jewels, dresses, banquets, and here you are, aligning threads on fabric for hours, trying not to sneeze on the imported silk. You also think about the arranged marriage that awaits you, or that has already arrived, depending on this phase of your life. About how this embroidery could be a gift for your father-in-law, or part of your dowry, or something to decorate the chapel altar. You wish it were just a hobby, but in reality, it's as if every stitch is saying, "See how dedicated I am, how obedient, and how I possess a slightly melancholy artistic vision." You've embroidered cushions, towels, purses, and even a book cover. Because, of course, if the book already costs a fortune, it's only fair to wrap it in embroidered cloth. Your room looks like an exhibition of patience, sewn by a woman who clearly needs a vacation, or at least a lute, to vary the routine. One of the maids approaches and offers a goblet of watered-down wine or weak ale, as always, because trusting pure water is asking medieval luck to play games with you. You accept, take a sip, and return to the hoop. This time, the stitch comes loose. You redo it. It comes loose again. You breathe deeply. It's an art, they say. It's a virtue, they say. You feel it's almost a hand-stitched penance, though some call it virtue. Maybe it's both, but today it leans more toward punishment. The light from the window has already changed angle. Now it's hitting you straight in the forehead. You close your eyes for an instant, maybe 5 seconds, maybe 20. When you open them, you realize you've embroidered a crooked flower. Very crooked, but you can disguise it with an extra stitch here, another there. Nothing a flowery stag can't hide. You stand up a bit to stretch your legs, feeling your knees crack as if to warn you. This body wasn't made to stay still for so long. The hoop rests in your lap, and you look at the work with a tired pride. It's beautiful, and no one will know how much suffering went into each petal. The maid returns with another thread. This time, lilac. You change the thread, make the knot, and continue, because the day is only half over. And despite all this delicate effort, the only reward that comes after is more time, embroidering. Who knows, one day you might teach someone else to do this, and she will pretend to like it, and pretend she's embroidering for pleasure. And not because she needs to maintain the appearance of someone who has nothing to do, but must do it well. You return to the stitch, one more, another, and if you look closely you'll see, you are indeed sewing your place in the world. Thread by thread, silently, with a faint smell of old cloth and resignation. You finished the embroidery. The colourful wool stag even seems to smile, perhaps knowing it won't suffer the same trials as you. Line by line, stitch by stitch, you were sewing more than an image. You were reinforcing the idea that patience and discipline are indispensable virtues. But when the cloth finally rests in your lap, you understand. The embroidery was never just about flowers or stags. It was about training yourself. Each stitch is a lesson in how to be seen as patient, delicate, and worthy. In the Middle Ages, for a wealthy woman, appearance wasn't a detail. It was capital. It was capital. Your skin, your hair, your clothes, even the way you moved your lips when you smiled. Everything was a shop window, a silent billboard announcing, "Here is a worthy lady, delicate, ready to be negotiated in the marriage market." And it's at this point you understand every part of your body isn't exactly yours. It's family patrimony, carefully managed, like someone tending to a treasure that needs to yield a good return. Your skin, for example, it must be pale, not because it's pretty, but because it proves you've never worked under the sun. Having a tanned face or marked hands meant proximity to the fields, to the hoe, to physical labor. And that would be a scandal. Pale, smooth skin is the nobility's calling card. The more colorless, the higher your value. Basically, you are the blank canvas of the aristocracy. Keeping your hands delicate is also part of the spectacle. Your hands must be clean and smooth, without any trace of a callus. A callus would be proof you touched something heavier than an embroidery needle, and that cannot happen. So you learn to hold the quill, to pick up the hoop, always with your fingertips, as if any firmer contact were a crime against your reputation. And don't think this is just vanity, it's constant surveillance. Every visitor who arrives at your home, every lady who crosses your path, every quick glance at a banquet, they are all evaluating your skin, your hands, your manner. It's almost like living in an infinite fashion show, only without applause, just silent judgments. The hair is also its own chapter. It can't be completely loose, as that would be seen as careless. It must be bound in braids, ribbons, or linen caps. The full veil is reserved for the married. Every strand must convey discipline. And how do you maintain this? With rare baths, vinegar, aromatic herbs, and a lot of patience. The daily brushing is an event. Your maid runs the bone comb through your strands like someone facing a battle. And you endure every pull because you can't complain. Complaining would be admitting you don't even have the stamina to care for your hair. In the end, your hair isn't yours. It's a flag. If it's shiny and well pinned, your family gains points in the social championship. If it's disheveled, you're the subject of whispers, and the clothes, they are a spectacle. Heavy, uncomfortable, full of layers, but fundamental, because each fabric is a symbol of wealth. Imported linen, proof of status. Rare silk, proof of high status. Thick, well-dyed wool, still status, just the wearable version. If a peasant woman wears a simple wool tunic, you need 3 layers of linen, an embroidered surcoat, dangling jewels, and your hair tightly braided or covered by a delicate cap. Every cloth is a reminder that status has weight. It doesn't matter if you're sweating like you've run a marathon. What matters is looking like a walking showcase of wealth. The weight of the clothes constantly reminds you that being noble is less about comfort and more about showing you can live without comfort. It's almost funny. The richer you are, the more trapped you are. And of course, the smile. You can't smile too much or too little. You can't laugh loudly, as that would be seen as a lack of modesty, nor keep your face too serious, which would look like arrogance. Your smile must be controlled, rehearsed, a middle ground between docility and neutrality. Basically, you train your mouth like you train your embroidery, stitch by stitch, curve by curve. Your posture is also rehearsed. You sit erect, back firm, feet together, hands resting lightly in your lap. Every gesture must convey balance. Even when you're tired, you can't show it. Even when you're bored, you must look attentive. You are a piece of porcelain on permanent display. Even your walk is calculated. Not too fast, which would seem like a lack of composure. Not too slow, which would look like laziness. Your walk must be elegant but discreet. The kind of step that doesn't draw attention, but also doesn't go unnoticed. In the end, you realize your life is a theater. You play the role of the perfect lady every day, at every moment, even when there's no audience, because the audience might always be hidden, watching. A servant, a neighbor, a distant relative. They are all inspectors of your reputation. And in the end, this highly controlled appearance isn't meant to win love. No one expects you to be lovable. What's expected is that you are presentable. Your image is an advertisement for potential alliances. Your face, your body, your clothes, everything must scream, worthy of a good contract. You know this. You've always known it. You were trained for it. When you were a child, they were already correcting your posture, adjusting your laugh, criticizing if your hands seemed too rough. The training started early, and now you follow it without even noticing. And the most curious part is that often you believe it. You believe you are worth more with pale skin, smooth hands, pinned-up hair, and a contained smile. You believe it so much that you feel guilty when a strand escapes your braid, when you laugh too loud, when you trip on the hem of your dress. It's as if your identity is measured in details of appearance, but deep down, you understand. It doesn't matter if you're happy or not. What matters is that you look suitable. Because in the Middle Ages, suitability is worth more than love. You take a deep breath, adjust your posture, smooth your heavy skirt, tuck the braid better under the delicate cap, and smile the right way. Not too much, not too little. Because in the end, you don't need to win romance. You just need to look worthy of a contract. And it is thus, carefully prepared, that you walk toward the next chapter of your life. Marriage. You spent your 14 years embroidering, smiling in silence, and training every gesture as if you were an actress in a theater without an audience. All to arrive here, the grand moment of your life. No, it's not freedom, not travel, not choice. It's marriage, or rather the contract. You are ready to be delivered as the centerpiece of a negotiation. After all, in the Middle Ages, marriage had nothing to do with romance. Love. That was the stuff of troubadours, the songs sung in town squares to distract peasants. For you, marriage is mathematics. Your dowry equals acres of land, barrels of wine, a few chests of silver, or even some horses. Yes, basically, you are the sum of everything your father can offer to impress another family. Your value is itemized. There's no use crying, no use negotiating. You are the package. And every detail of the package is discussed in family meetings that sound like market assemblies. She embroiders well, plays an instrument, can smile for hours without complaining. Excellent, close the deal. You watch from a distance as the adults talk. They aren't talking about you as a person. They are talking about your utility. It's as if you're being sold at a luxury fair, just without the stall and with no return policy. And then the day of the announcement comes. You will be promised to so-and-so from such and such family. You've heard of him, but never met him. Some say he's polite, others that he's too serious. A distant cousin whispers that he snores. None of it matters. What matters is that he has land, a respectable surname, and a coat of arms your father deemed worthy. The worst part is that often you only meet the groom at the ceremony. Yes, at the altar. In other cases you might see him beforehand. 2 or 3 sentences exchanged, always with half a dozen eyes watching. No privacy, no choice. In the Middle Ages, Tinder was basically a public market. Families displayed, evaluated, and closed the contract. Right to an opinion, 0. The dowry is delivered as part of the transaction. It's almost funny how everyone talks about it with pride. She comes with 20 acres of land, 3 chests of silver, and some embroidered linens. As if you come with an instruction manual and a free gift. And of course, on the other side, the groom's family might offer a symbolic gift, a promise of support, a smaller piece of land, maybe a few cows. But make no mistake, the weight of the transaction is always on your side. The dowry is the true currency of the marriage. You breathe deep and think, so this is it. My life is worth a herd of cattle. How comforting. The day of the ceremony arrives. You are dressed as if you were a statue. Heavy fabrics, a long veil, adornments that pull your head back. With every step, it feels like you're carrying the entire castle on your shoulders. The maids adjust your clothes, adjust your hair, even adjust the expression on your face. Smile, but not too much. Don't widen your eyes. Breathe, but slowly. You are transformed into a display window. In the church, the priest recites long phrases in Latin. You understand a word or two, but it makes no difference. The audience is happy. The groom smiles slightly awkwardly, and your family is already relaxed. Contract sealed, land secured. Applause. You look at the groom and think, well, at least he has all his teeth, or most of them. Better not complain. In some cases, the outcome was worse. Some were promised to much older men just because they had a title and coins. Compared to that, you even feel lucky, until you remember he chews with his mouth open. During the feast, the guests toast. Barrels of wine are opened. Tables laden with meat and bread appear. Apparently this is the happy moment. Everyone celebrates as if you've won the lottery. Only you realize it wasn't exactly a prize, but a controlled delivery. The gifts are also curious. Some families bring jewels, others bring fabrics, others bring less inspiring things like a pig or a lame horse. But everyone smiles, and you smile too. Not because you're happy, but because smiling just the right amount is part of the show. Giggling would be vulgar. Staying too serious would be arrogance. So you maintain the rehearsed smile, the one trained right alongside your embroidery. And so, your new life begins. You change houses, change routines, maybe even change your accent, depending on the region. Now you belong to another family. Your surname is updated as if changing a signature on a contract. You've stopped being someone's daughter and become someone's wife. Romance. Not a chance, at least not officially. You know your role is to keep the house in order, embroider even more, provide heirs, preferably male, and maintain the image that everything is under control. The rest is detail. And the most curious part is that in the midst of all this, everyone says you should feel lucky. Lucky because you married well. Lucky because you brought lands. Lucky because you now have a bigger house. But deep down, you know luck had nothing to do with it. It was just calculation. As the party winds down, you take a deep breath. The wine has made your head heavy. The clothes have made your shoulders ache. And the new life already weighs on you like the keys that will soon be dangling from your belt. You look around. Family, servants, guests, all excited, all talking loudly, all believing they witnessed a magical moment. And you smile. Not because you're happy, but because it's what's expected. And in your life, expectation is always worth more than reality. Now the contract is signed, and your life has officially changed. What comes next, no one talks about much, because if your routine before was training, from here on, it's execution, and there's little room left for leisure. You discover that after the contract, leisure is not synonymous with doing what you want. It's a set of polite activities with a set time, place, proper attire, and a small audience that judges in silence. You don't choose the activity chooses you. And it almost always starts with music. Lutes that demand patient fingers, harps that challenge already tired backs, and voices that intone long songs about nights promising the impossible. Sometimes they call on you to play a short piece, just to fill the afternoon. You rest the instrument on your lap, like holding a suspicious cat, pluck 2 pretty notes. The third comes out crooked, and everyone says, "How charming." Medieval applause doesn't measure virtuosity. It measures composure. You deliver the composure. The charm is a bonus when it comes. Between one song and another, someone opens a manuscript. A rare privilege, as only very wealthy families could afford these hand-copied stories. The romancers of the Arthurian world insist that a love exists that can cross walls, geographies, and mothers-in-law. On paper, it even makes you want to believe. You follow the ornate letters, the margins filled with gold leaf, the ink that shines as if it's breathing. When it gets to the part where the lady is rescued, you close your eyes a bit, out of politeness and because the parchment is heavy. On other afternoons, the text is more serious, in Latin, intoned in a way that sounds like both chant and rule. The sound echoes off the stones, and you learn the art of looking moved by the beauty without letting your face show too much emotion. Emotion causes wrinkles. Public praise yields commentary. Balance yields peace. When the weather allows, they announce walks. Don't get excited, it's not to see the city. The walk is inside the walled garden, a true hortus conclusus. The enclosed garden, a symbol of purity and confinement. Geometric flower beds, gravel paths that demand short steps, bushes trimmed as if a barber lived in the soil. You identify smells, rosemary, rue, lavender, and the damp perfume of the moss-covered fountain. The wall protects, the wall limits. You admire a swan playing the role of a natural superior. You make the circuit one more time. You notice how the light on the leaves changes throughout the day. The garden is beautiful, beautiful and short. It's like breathing through a scented straw. Air comes in, but in domesticated portions. On more lively days, note the exaggeration, someone suggests games. The board appears with heavy pieces, smooth to the touch. Chess to practice what you already practice in life. Calculated movement, containment, deferral of impulse. The piece called The Lady, the Queen, is the one with the most freedom. Funny that. On the board, she crosses the world. Off the board, she becomes a metaphor. You move with her, capture a rook, retreat elegantly, and everyone comments on how your mind works. You nod, as if you still needed to prove you think. Other times it's tables, that back and forth of stones and dice, where chance pretends to be strategy. You roll, smile when you lose a little, give thanks when you win slowly. Never show euphoria. Moderation is a sign of composure. Laughing too hard becomes gossip. Staying too serious too. The game is to smile just the right amount. The music might return in a domestic version, with discreet flutes and voices trained not to shatter goblets. There are days of small auditions, where one young woman sings, another reads, another embroiders in an open scene to prove that talent flourishes when well tutored. You choose your position on the chair with the knowledge of one who has studied. Half profile favors the veil. A hand in the lap betrays less fatigue. A lowered chin communicates attention without excessive submission. The audience is small, but the news they carry is large. Who laughed too loud? Who sang off key? Who seemed absent for 3 heartbeats? Nobody takes notes, everybody remembers. There is also useful leisure, supervising the painting of an illumination, choosing thread colors for a banner, reviewing notes that will go to other houses. You gaze at a tiny St. George defeating a dragon that fits on your thumbnail and think how comfortable it would be to fit on that scale. Small, defined, with a clear destiny. Out here, everything is large, heavy, and at the same time tight. You invent lightness in the details, in a blue shadow that gives depth, in a painted leaf that fakes wind where there is none. Conversation is on the list, but with a manual. It's not about venting, it's about circulating acceptable content. You comment on the weather, the medieval one, and the one in the room. You evaluate fabrics, spices, a recent marriage of people who aren't even present. The secret to conversation is to be a bridge. It connects people, it doesn't drop anyone in the river. You practice the neutral reply that pleases without promising, the short laugh that ends a topic, the silence that seems like prudence and not fatigue. In rare minutes, a crack appears, a real confidence, a gentle memory, a strange fondness for a certain flower. You hoard these pearls of chance, like someone hiding expensive spice in the bottom of a chest. There are days they take you to observe hunts from a distance, from up high, with a safety more symbolic than practical. Even more common is falconry, a spectacle of precision that you applaud as a spectator. The bird has the freedom you will never have. Horses pass like gusts of wind, voices rise. The dust draws horizontal veils in the air. The scene has energy, but it's the energy of a shop window. Your role is to notice, praise, recognize coats of arms, remember names. Upon returning, you know exactly who wanted to be seen with whom, who smiled from the corner of their mouth, who greeted first, who pretended not to see. Politics disguised as a pastime that trains the eye for politics. It's always a circle that returns to the same point. When night falls, leisure changes texture. The music becomes softer, not out of kindness, but out of exhaustion. Conversations lengthen their syllables, steps slow down. You read aloud a passage everyone already knows, just so the sound of the words can rearrange the furniture of thought. It's almost a technique. The old story serves as a new pillow. Sometimes it works, to the point where you forget the weight of your necklace for a few minutes. Other times, the necklace wins on points. And of course, there's the invisible etiquette that runs over all of this. Where to sit, when to stand, to whom you direct the first smile, how to balance the goblet with one hand while the other holds back the sleeve. That insists on sweeping the tabletop. Leisure is also a test. It's not a cruel test, but it's a test. You pass if you don't spill, don't exaggerate, don't disappear too much, don't appear too much. It seems simple until you try. The body participates reluctantly. Hard shoes remind you with every step that beautiful hurts. Layers of fabric heat you when they shouldn't and cool you when you need warmth. The spine begs for a truce that isn't in the protocol. Still, there are small privileges of sensation. A musical chord that hangs in the air longer than necessary. A line from the reading that hits a secret target. A chess move as perfect as a sigh. In those seconds, you almost believe the day had a break. Almost. The night garden is the final stage. The air smells of water and stone. The sky brings an indecent amount of stars for someone who needs to sleep early. And the wind moves the leaves with the discretion of a maid. You walk slowly, mentally counting how many circles you've made on the same path, and admit there is a certain peace in repetition. The mind, trained for controlled images, takes the opportunity to rehearse a safe freedom. What if, for one day, you could walk through the gate without an escort, buy a piece of fruit just because you wanted to, choose a book by its weight and not its subject? It's a harmless daydream that ends with the same question. And then you go back. You always go back, because leisure is a breath, and you need it to fulfill the rest. It's not an end-of-day amusement. It's maintenance for the character you were trained to play. Tomorrow, when they open the windows, they'll ask how the music was, who sang well, if the manuscript had new illuminations, if the game board was interesting. You'll have soft answers, the kind that glide, and inside you'll keep your true notes, that one chord, that blue shadow, that perfect move. Deep down, you know the program doesn't exist to fill time. It exists to mold it. The ear learns, the hand trains, the eye edits, the mouth measures. All of this prepares you for what counts in the next scenes, keeping the house breathing to the rhythm of etiquette and of the one in charge, understanding others' moods before they become storms, calming the surface when the depths are stirred. The pastime trains an invisible muscle, useful, silent, practical, and there's the fact that no one says aloud, but everyone understands. Marriage isn't a happy ending, it's a starting point with a to-do list. Music alleviates, reading anesthetizes. The chessboard teaches, the garden organizes thought, but none of them suspend the calendar that expects from you presence, correctness, and results. Upon returning to your room among veils and pins, you recognize this reminder without drama. The body asks for a bed, the mind asks for a truce, and conjugal life asks for everything that was promised on the paper you didn't sign, but which was signed for you. You rest your hand on the wood of the window, feel the cold rising from the sill, and realize how silence is a rare blessing. It doesn't last. Soon come footsteps, messages, the goodnight protocol, the same phrases in a known order. You respond as always, with the trained calm of someone who doesn't make waves unnecessarily. When you lie down, your muscles give thanks, your head negotiates with the pillow, and your thoughts, before fading, align the next day's priorities. The rest was what it could be. The real day begins at dawn, and in that there is no rehearsal. In the darkness you can hear the castle breathing, wood that creaks, wind that passes, someone coughing in a room down the hall. You close your eyes and understand with an almost comical clarity. No matter how much the lutes soothe, no matter how wide the gardens seem, no matter how much the chessboard offers you 10 moves ahead, all of it is an intermission. The main spectacle happens off the board, and the role they gave you demands a performance without a single stumble. When sleep finally approaches, you accept the tacit agreement that keeps the house standing. The entertainment serves so that you can continue to be useful. Tomorrow that usefulness has a name, a face, a mood, preferences and demands. You know, you've always known. And without fanfare, you prepare to deliver what they expect, from the controlled smile to the commitments that sustain surnames and coats of arms. The leisure was good while it lasted. Now, married life calls you by name, with a gentle voice and a weight all its own. It's with her you wake, and with her you sleep, and it is she who, sooner or later, will collect on everything the soft parlors do not show. The leisure served to smooth the edges, beautiful while it lasted. Now comes what nobody calls leisure, married life. Being a wife isn't a prize. It's a position with clear functions, silent evaluations, and an auditorium that never closes. You discover quickly that the marriage so celebrated with music and wine turns into a routine with an invisible task list. The way you speak to your husband in the first hour of the day, the art of asking for something without sounding demanding, the skill of reading his mood before he even knows what it is. If you get it right, the day glides. If you get it wrong, the house learns new tensions. Yes, it's a type of management, only the budget is emotional. You learn the house's calendar by your husband's rhythm, and by your own, because the administration of the domestic space falls to you. He dictates the political tone. You ensure the internal gears turn without friction. There are mornings he returns from the stable, exuding pride and hay. You must praise the horse, the training, the saddle, the weather, anything to keep the breeze in his favor. Other mornings he comes from the hall, full of news of neighbors and coats of arms, and you must listen with the attention of a chronicler and the memory of an archive. The right word at the right time saves an afternoon. The wrong word inaugurates a winter. There is also the set of tasks no one announces, but everyone expects. Among them, the duties of the bedchamber, spoken of in euphemisms, guarded by thick curtains and predictable schedules. You don't make speeches, you don't write treaties, you make the gears turn. And while it turns, the city outside continues its life of markets and mud, indifferent to the discreet theater of your room. The manual doesn't exist, but you've already memorized it. Delicacy without hesitation, presence without spectacle, signs of affection that are contained and effective. Romance sometimes appears in the medieval way, a fine fabric that arrives via a merchant, a gaze less harsh than usual, a story told to the end, without rush. You save these signs like rare coins in a small coffer. Soon comes the agenda item that dominates all others, heirs. It's not a topic, it's a mission. Suddenly your body becomes a kind of public clock. The older women observe without seeming to. The servants calculate in silence. The men converse in metaphors that fool no one. You pretend not to notice, but you feel the weight of the subject in the hallways. The calendar measures seasons, the house measures expectations. And you breathe with care, like someone holding a jar filled to the brim. When the news finally hints at itself, The lateness, the dizziness, the strange taste in the morning. Everyone reacts with a mix of joy and caution. No one celebrates loudly. In the Middle Ages, celebrating early is tempting fate. You get extra cushions, recommendations for short steps, herbal teas that promise comfort. The neighbors offer advice that has crossed generations. The midwife, the sage femme of the family, appears, knowing the way, administering every detail, with the seriousness of someone who understands the value of what's at stake. The house's breathing changes. The months proceed with prudent steps. You learn by heart the least awkward positions for sleeping, the right cloths to alleviate the sudden heat, the trick of walking as if carrying a bowl of honey that cannot spill. Your wardrobe gets looser, which, let's admit, is the first real comfort the marriage has offered. You observe your own body with calm surprise, where it stretches, where it weighs, where it complains, and you talk to it without rush. Slowly, we are in this together. The domestic preparations grow around you. Tiny shifts are sewn, strips of fabric are prepared to swaddle the child tightly. Clean cloths are set aside. A special basin is procured. The position of the birthing stool or the bed is reviewed. Everything simple, everything considered. You participate as you can, approving a fabric, refusing a strong smell, accepting a protective embroidery that someone insists on adding, not out of foolish superstition, but out of practical love. Those who live between thick walls learn to respect the habits that give a sense of control. The day approaches. The house silences in a different way. The men disappear to make space. The women occupy the room with small objects and larger certainties. The midwife speaks low, holds your hand with a skill that mixes technique and courage, and time stretches like a ribbon. There is no lute, no chess, no garden. Just you, your body working with an ancient strength and a chorus of breathing that lends you cadence. This isn't a scene from a romance, it's serious work. You think of the women before you, of those who will come after, and find in that thought a sisterhood that isn't spoken, only lived. Each whispered encouragement is worth a treaty. The Middle Ages are not kind to this moment. Even in wealthy houses with better cloths, more hands, ample herbs, and guaranteed privacy, the risk exists. It isn't a character, it's the scenery. That's why no one promises anything and everyone does everything. You follow the directions, listen to the count, hold on to strength you didn't know you had. Time becomes elastic. At some point, the line pulls. The silence is filled with a new sound, and the house finally lets out the breath it was holding. A small, sharp, stubborn cry. You smile without strength, cry without noise, and discover an exhaustion that both weighs you down and makes you float. Then comes the aftermath. Cleaning, swaddling, warming, giving thanks, closing the windows, lighting another candle, changing the sheet, leaning back slowly, accepting a warm drink that tastes like quiet victory. The world shrinks to the size of the arm that embraces. Someone announces the news to the hallway. Feet run. The name was already chosen weeks ago. The father appears with a brief smile, enough to perform the ritual and retreat. You laugh internally. When was the last time you saw him so light? Maybe that's the grace of certain events. They dismantle armor for 1 second. The period of lying in begins. Days of confinement, of the body reorganizing, of a routine that shrinks into the bedroom. The women of the house function like a clock. Tea, broth, changing, fresh air, short conversations, very low laughs. Sometimes the child goes to a wet nurse, a custom of wealthy families to divide the tasks or ensure you recover. Sometimes it stays with you, clinging like a promise. Each house has its formula, each woman her rhythm. There is no infallible manual, only shared experience and a pile of clean cloths that never seems to be large enough. You learn the new noises, the grunt that asks for a change, the hiccup that asks for a new position, the heavy silence that demands an attentive eye. You also learn the diplomacy of well-intentioned advice. Accept what helps, let pass what pinches, and thank everyone with the same trained gratitude that keeps the peace between generations. The body, that old, demanding partner, sends messages. There will be good days. There will be curved days. You accept them all in the order they come. Medieval life has few margins. Motherhood occupies almost all of them. When enough time has passed, the house begins to pull you back out of the room. First, short steps in the hall, then a chair near the window. Later, you're in the walled garden with a blanket over your shoulders, watching the light hit the same leaves again. It's funny how everything looks the same, and yet completely different. The world kept spinning at the rhythm it always spun. It was your orbit that changed. Now, every simple decision includes someone else. And you become, at the same time, guardian of the routine and of the unpredictable. The demands don't lessen, they just change form. If before the requirement was pleasing your husband, now you must add informal reports about the baby. Does he sleep well, eat well, cry much? The comments come with kindness, but they are never neutral. You've learned to answer with phrases that fit in picture frames. He is doing well. We are finding our way. There are days. It works. The house doesn't like extremes. It likes stability. The husband, in turn, finds in the air a gentle mirror. He stays closer or further away, depending on the type of man he already was. You realize, with the clarity of one who has passed through equal parts pain and joy, that he too is learning a new role. Some become storytellers, others become inspectors of blankets, the best become managers of visitors. Your invisible job, as always, is to ensure everyone leaves this domestic opera believing they are playing fundamental roles. Which isn't entirely untrue. Slowly, life returns to its previous rhythm, now with a new addition bundled in linen. The room regains its former appearance. The corridor returns to the sound of footsteps. The hall receives people with diverse matters. The house needs to show it is strong, united, prosperous, and there is one social ritual perfect for communicating all of this at once without sending a single letter: a great dinner. The banquet isn't just food, it's a message. Guests will be invited. The best pieces will come out of the armory. The spices will perfume the air like invisible flags. You understand the message without anyone needing to say it. So, as your body finishes settling and the child learns its first sleep maps, you return to training the other role you have always dominated, the hostess. The dress is already waiting in a chest. The jewels ask to be polished. The smile rehearses in the mirror, the angle that survives 3 hours of greetings. The Great Hall does not forgive distractions, and the Great Hall will be your stage once more. That's how it is. If you pass through the private storm, the city demands the public rainbow. You breathe, adjust the veil, that visible sign that you are now a wife, not a daughter. Measure the distance between the chair and the table, and think about the cutlery that won't be used because the etiquette of the era prefers bread as a luxury napkin. Everything is ready. Almost. All that's left is to wear the weight of the brilliance and walk through the door as if it were born light. The decision is made. Tonight, the house will shine. The message travels the corridors like an organized wind. You sense it before anyone tells you. It's the kind of day when even the dust seems to move in a more orderly line. The servants open chests, air out fabrics, and polish pieces that shine for a living. You breathe deep and accept the unannounced mission to transform yourself into a walking, smiling, silent, and efficient showcase. In short, to be who you were trained your entire life to be. It starts with the chest of fine clothes. The chosen dress has the weight of a small fortress. Linen-lined, silk-applied, with embroidery that tells stories you haven't had time to live. The hem kisses the floor as if marking territory. Your body enters the garment in stages. First the arms, which discover they will have little freedom. then the torso, which learns to negotiate with the seams, finally the breath, which accepts to reduce its enthusiasm by half. The maid pulls the laces with the knowledge of someone who has done this 100 times. You could support a bridge with less fabric, but elegance, they say, requires structure. Then, the hair. It's already pinned, disciplined, tamed by ribbons that have a will of their own. Over it, the cap. Over the cap, the veil. Over the veil, the adornment that proves you aren't just anyone who wears a veil. Pins enter and exit your head like commas in a long text. You barely feel it. Your scalp is used to the daily chapter. The jewels arrive in a case that could house a small animal. You observe the pieces like someone evaluating meteors. They shine, they weigh, they hang well. Necklace, buckle, rings. Each object retells an alliance, a memory, a look closely at us. The necklace, in particular, decides it will compete with your spine for dominance. You smile at the bronze mirror, the same mirror that insists on giving you a slightly liquid face, and practice that medium, elegant, neutral, breathable smile. It will work. As the entire house synchronizes its steps, the kitchens begin their concert of pans. From the door to the hallway come waves of smells that say, meat, spice, high fire, hurry. You identify pepper, ginger, clove, cinnamon, something citrusy that someone squeezed too hard, and expensive sugar, the kind that only appears on occasions requiring careful accounting. Spits turn with patience, cauldrons converse in bubbles, knives dance on boards. It's a world apart, and you belong to the audience, even knowing that without this world, your hall becomes a silent stage. The arrangement of the great hall reveals itself in a silent choreography. The high table is raised on the dais. Upon it, bright white cloths, like snow from a story, candlesticks that reflect every lit candle in duplicate. The salt cellars, containers holding the precious salt, mark invisible territories, because even seasoning has a hierarchy. Each seat is a message. Who sits close, who sits far, who deserves to see their own reflection in the polished metal, and who must be content with wood. You know the map and its subtexts. Medieval etiquette is geography. Before the parade of meats and delicacies, the discreet ritual of hand-washing, pitchers of perfumed water, basins to collect the day from the fingers, cloths offered like pauses. Everything indicates the meal is about to begin. You know that knives and spoons will appear. In most kingdoms, only knives and spoons. Forks are a rare novelty, seen more in Italian and Eastern families. The polite hand is still a utensil. And as custom dictates, the bread serves for almost everything. A base, a scoop, a discreet wipe. Sometimes it's cutlery, sometimes it's a napkin with faith. In the end, it becomes the edible memory of what was served on top of it. The first service arrives in blocks. Presentation is as important as taste. Dishes displaying birds with their feathers reattached for picturesque effect. Doughs molded into the shapes of animals. Pies hiding benign surprises, preferably artistic, not alive. Jellied preparations made from set broths, sometimes colored with saffron like impromptu stained glass. The servants create a river of entrees, platters, trays, baskets. You train yourself to look at it all with delight, without a face of astonishment. It's the kind of spectacle that mixes prestige and appetite. And if appetite hesitates because of the necklace and the dress, prestige eats for you. The conversation must be born at the correct volume. You greet the guest to your left, observe the one to your right. Measure the tone of the laugh from the guest at the end. He sets the mood for the rest. You share pieces, offer cuts, and sweetly refuse anything you know won't work with your outfit. Between sips of spiced wine, with spices that warm the head and decisions, you maintain the social script. A brief compliment to the host, even if the host is you by proxy. A calculated comment on the quality of this year's wheat. An elegant reminder of a previous meeting that, with luck, no one remembers clearly. The important thing is to plant the feeling of continuity. A good banquet doesn't start from scratch. It reactivates commitments. You observe the details that tell stories. The guest who arrives with a new belt and a redone coat of arms, a sign of recent alliances. The relative who insists on speaking loudly, as if volume compensates for relevance. The lady wearing bold colors in a time of sobriety. The merchant imitating noble habits with almost moving dexterity. The hall is a heraldic zoo. Each one displays their feathers, their claws, their song. You, from your perch, organize the jungle with a few correct glances. Between courses come the entremets, small performances that interrupt the food with story. A sweet, molded like a castle. A dish that arrives covered in leaves and, when uncovered, reveals a small work of patience. Everyone is enchanted, and you are too, with the serenity of someone who knows how much work is hidden behind the enchantment. There are still the musicians who wander between the tables. The melody catches you in the middle of a gesture, and for an instant you forget the weight of the necklace. It passes, but it's nice while it lasts. You manage your own meal like a negotiation. Eat enough not to seem rude to the house. Refuse enough to keep your voice firm and the dress in place. The trencher bread absorbs sauces with heroism, and you silently thank this invention that avoids embarrassment. The wine, when it seems too generous, you dilute with conversation. A well-placed comment cuts half a goblet. At a certain point, they bring delicacies that are worth more for what they mean than for what they nourish. A fish from far away, a spice that crossed water and sand, a sweet made of expensive sugar. This type of presence confirms that your table reaches further than the castle walls. It's politics in the form of perfume. The guests sense it, understand it, and return it in the same currency. Compliments that carry promises, smiles that hide lists, toasts that stick like wax seals. All of this, however, demands a type of attention from you that doesn't show. You must notice when someone has gone too long without being served, when two people who shouldn't sit side by side ended up sharing a salt cellar, when a distant conversation veers toward a thorny subject. An effective hostess is a strategist with the smile of a painted screen. Occasionally, you rise from the chair, adjusting your presence as one adjusts a curtain, changing a focus, calming a shadow. No one notices the maneuver. Everyone just feels the room settle. The heat from the kitchens travels with the dishes. At times, the hall begins to feel like a greenhouse. You feel a drop of sweat on your forehead threaten the dignity of your veil. The trick is simple. Goblet in hand, look at a distant candelabrum. Tilt your face just enough for the air to touch the skin beneath the fabric. The drop recedes. The necklace wins another dispute. The night proceeds as if everything were static. The art of the banquet is in what doesn't look like effort. You also recognize the small tensions that materialize in details. A non-existent fork sought by someone from more modern regions. A borrowed knife that doesn't return. An ambitious piece of meat that threatens the plate's gravity. None of this becomes a problem because you anticipate, signal, call, offer, exchange, laugh quietly, resolve. The operation only appears when it fails. Your goal is for it to never appear. As the service progresses, the conversations loosen. The wine, spiced with clove and cinnamon, warms convictions. A comfortable stomach authorizes minor confidences. You navigate this sea with a steady hand, accompanying one toast, deflecting another, making space for a story that interests the house, gently ending another that interests no one except the storyteller. When a laugh dares to climb one step beyond what is recommended, you resolve it with a witty comment and a gesture of the hand that changes the wind in the room. Meanwhile, the servants clear, wash, bring, take, disappear, reappear. The night has its own mathematics. On the larger dishes, the shine begins to fade. On the trays, the metal registers fingerprints that the kitchen erases before anyone notices. The candle consumes itself in silence. The wax creates slow rivers. The tablecloth organizes crumbs with charity. You mentally record the balance. Who ate more than they spoke? Who spoke more than they listened? Who looked more than they should? Tomorrow, these notes become decisions. When the sweets arrive, molded almond paste, fruit cooked with spices and honey, small tarts exuding sugary security, you understand the night is entering the territory of soft diplomacy. This is the moment when old disagreements become curious memories, when new promises are born with the taste of clove. Sweets were invented for this, to tie up endings. And yet between the beauty of the platters and the music that insists on being pleasant, you perceive what everyone perceives and pretends not to. Luxury has a hidden side. The meat came from far away and passed through too many hands. The wine is sometimes more enthusiasm than quality. The kitchen ran like someone running from the rain, and some pan has seen better days. The spices mask, harmonize, elevate, and they also conceal. It's part of the game. At the table, no one asks for details they don't want to hear. You end the night as you began it, firm, polished, breathing in chapters. You thank, accompany, bid farewell, promise visits, return pieces to their case, and dismantle the hall in your head before the servants do it with their hands. Your shoulders register the journey of the dress. Your feet remember every stone in the floor. Your voice maintains the right tone until the last door. And as you leave, you take with you what matters. Who was truly enchanted, who pretended with competence, who tried to read beyond the table. Outside, the air weighs less. Inside, everything looked beautiful for hours. Mission accomplished. And as you remove a ring, careful not to disturb a seam, you admit without surprise the obvious thing that no one hangs on the wall. Behind every glittering tray, there are tricks, haste, disputes, and a handful of discreet risks. The shop window works. The backstage does too. Tonight, the brilliance was shown. Tomorrow, you will face what the brilliance sometimes hides. Now that the hall is dimming and the guests are retreating, you finally discover the other spectacle, that of the body's endurance. You learn early that a beautiful banquet is like a painting. From a distance, it's perfection. Up close, you can see the nervous brushstrokes, the last-minute patch-up, and a lot of strategic lighting. The table shines, the candles perform their own choreography. The polished metal pretends it was born that way. The entire hall poses for future memory. But whoever lives here knows, a big party is a game with an invisible score, and the staging doesn't stop at the decoration. It continues on the plate. The food enters like a parade. The first platters arrive confidently, with golden meats and sauces that seem to have studied rhetoric. A confident cook bets on the trio of pepper, ginger, and clove to convince any palate. Expensive sugar appears where least expected, just to prove the house can afford it. You recognize the hand of the craft, and at the same time, you recognize the haste. When time was short or the salt didn't cooperate, the spice becomes a cloak. It works for the distracted guest. The attentive one gives thanks, chews slowly, and decides whether to have more or just praise the aroma and move on. The old hero of the table, the trencher bread, works overtime. It's a plate, a spoon, a barrier, a clothing saver, and in the end, it becomes the edible memory of what passed over it. You position it with the precision of someone placing a shield. A slice of meat threatens to escape. The bread holds it. Sauce decides to explore gravity. The bread welcomes it. A sleeve dares to approach the broth. The bread, again, takes the hit. There are still the spoons, the knives, perhaps a timid fork if the fashion has already knocked on the door. But the well-educated hand remains the official utensil. Elegance here is fine coordination. The wine circulates with affection. It's not always a marvel, but it's a faithful companion. Spiced with clove and cinnamon, it warms decisions and shortens speeches. You master the mathematics of the sip. You accept the right toasts, wet your lips when the conversation demands a breath, and let the goblet rest, always one finger fuller than they expect. Whoever commands the room cannot be commanded by the goblet, and whoever knows this doesn't announce it. they just practice it. Between services, the tricks of the spectacle appear. Pies in the shape of creatures, re-feathered birds, to look as if they returned from the hunt just to shine. Doughs molded with the patience of a miniaturist monk. Everyone lets out an ooh at the regulated volume. You accompany them with a smile that says, perfection, while internally you pay attention to what matters. Right temperature, steam at the right level, a dish that crosses the hall without losing its dignity. The rest is talk for travelers. The dangers of the night don't just come from the pans. A toast at the wrong time can start a season of misunderstandings. A joke that doesn't cross the table well becomes a thesis in the hallway. An ill-timed compliment lights a candle on an altar you didn't want lit. You circulate like someone tightening the furniture. You adjust volumes, move people slightly, offer platters as diplomatic bridges. The hostess inside you has a map of the hall in her head and 2 or 3 phrases ready for every fire that threatens to start. Let's listen to the troubadour. Let me introduce you to so-and-so. You must see this. And the current changes direction without anyone noticing. The hunt is its own chapter. When the roast arrives perfectly done, the hall approves with knives and satisfied silence. When it's overdone, the sauce becomes the protagonist, and everyone pretends that was the idea all along. Fish is more demanding. If it arrived fresh, the sea entered through the door with a bugle. If not, another kind of sea entered, one that demands caution. You master the lateral compliment. The presentation is magnificent, while your hand politely refuses a second portion. The body is grateful. The dress, too. The wheel of stories accelerates after the second service. The merchant appears, talking of routes with a taste of adventure. The relative enumerates names with the taste of a list. The noble neighbor measures territory by talking about horses. At the same time, the feminine wing performs its own quadrille. New colors of fabric, dyes that don't fade, embroidery that deserves credit, marriages that deserve analysis, all in velvet-covered phrases. No one says war, but everyone is practicing strategy, chess with people. And if you think the risk is just digestive, think about reputation. A nod off at the end of the hall becomes a legend. A laugh above the proper tone becomes a biography. Disappearing for 5 minutes without an authorized witness becomes an apocryphal romance. You master the trick of presence without excess. You appear when asked, disappear when convenient, and reappear as if you'd never left. As you pass, you collect small tensions with your hand for tomorrow and plant small agreements with your gaze, I'll speak with you later. The night yields promises that are paid on another day. The artistic entremets return, now with sweets. Almond paste molded into flowers that never wilt, fruits cooked in honey that shine like glass, a touch of rose water that transforms a dish into a memory. Sweets are the moment when old sharp edges are rounded off for 15 minutes. It's when you can suggest the visit that matters, sew up the invitation that was missing, seal with sugar what the meat didn't resolve. Politics by the spoonful. Behind the scenes, you know the kitchen ran like an army. Full oven, non-stop cauldron, restless knives, a woodpile that needed to have been larger. In the hall, everything is fluid. On your back, the necklace reminds you that gravity exists. On your feet, the shoe reminds you that the floor exists. On your head, the adornment reminds you that pins exist. Still, you maintain your axis as if sitting on a throne of clouds. It's a professional illusion, and it works. Inevitably, a mini chaos of luxury occurs. A candle decides to weep too much wax. A tray tips. A servant is distracted. A goblet threatens to fly. In 3 gestures, a look, an adjustment, a dry word, you restore order to the universe. Almost no one notices. But it's you who saves the spectacle. Not everything, however, can be pacified. There are intrigues that sprout from deep roots. Two men dispute the same strip of land with adjectives. Two ladies exchange sharp pleasantries. A third, someone weighs your every response as if it were the measure of an agreement. You don't defend, you deflect. You change certainty to idea, now to later, never to we shall see. Words in a hall are what spices are in a kitchen. They either save it or spoil it. You season with parsimony. When the last wave of platters circulates and the candles become shorter than the conversations, it's time to initiate the landing ritual. The music takes on a soft tone. The laughter returns inward. The chairs begin to speak to the knees. You perceive the moment to rise for the first time with the intent to close. It's not rising all at once, it's rising in chapters. Thanking, indicating next steps, promising answers, embracing with a short phrase, letting the table breathe. The hall likes an ending without a jolt. The body, which has complied in silence, sends its reports. Shoulders map the weight of the necklace. Feet list the floor's irregularities in order of pain. The waist negotiates a temporary peace treaty with the seam. You listen to every complaint, but answer only in your thoughts. It will pass soon. You've had practice. You discreetly remove a ring, loosen a pin, and the world improves by 2 millimeters. In the antechamber, the air is less spice, more cold stone. You inhale slowly, and for the first time all night, you don't have to balance a goblet. You think about what was said, what was eaten, what was agreed upon without paper. You also think about what the kitchen saved for tomorrow, what the servants will comment on in the courtyard, what the neighborhood will hear with small poetic adaptations. It's part of the ecosystem. What you control is the tone. The house begins to dim, slowly, one candelabra at a time, as if the light too must follow etiquette. The hall, which seemed larger with the marching platters, shrinks to its real size. The shine is stored in the metal until the next summons. What remains is stone, wood, and the silence that only exists when the party has already surrendered. You walk down the corridor with the sensation of having crossed two cities, the one of the spectacle and the one of the backstage. Your hand brushes the cold wall. Your ear still holds a remnant of the lute. Your nose distinguishes the end of the clove from the beginning of the clean linen. With every step, a small return. To the place, it's night. To you, the right to exit the stage without applause, because the audience has already gone to sleep, believing it all happened on its own. On the stairs, the sound of two servants storing what's left. On your back, the memory of conversations that will yield decisions. On the horizon, a bed with the dignity of never having an opinion. You smile inwardly with a simple conclusion. The banquet promised brilliance and delivered. It promised peace and negotiated. It promised pleasure and dosed it, and it promised nothing about the risks. But they came, as they always do, wrapped in a beautiful dish. You, trained, tasted with care, listened with a filter, spoke with measure, and emerged whole. By the standards of the era, that is a victory by 2 horse lengths. Now, the body asks for kindness. Water without spectacle, light cloth, silence that doesn't judge. It's enough. The abundance today worked for 5. Politics ate from the same plate. The wine wanted a long conversation. You delivered every version of your presence. The one that receives, the one that negotiates, the one that calms, the one that concludes. After facing even the food, all that's left is to retreat before the house wakes a second time. You climb the last set of stairs with the care of someone carrying their own fatigue like a rare artifact. The room awaits you with the air of a seashell. Veil on the chairback, basin set aside, nightgown folded with the patience of someone who knows you. Kneeling to untie a knot becomes a gesture of gratitude. Taking off the jewelry feels like taking off the day. Releasing your hair gives your neck back the right to exist without a necklace. And when the door closes softly, there is no more perfume, no platter, no promise. Just the distant rumor of the castle undoing its own party. You extinguish the candles in the order habit taught you. You lie down with the gentleness of someone who won a championship that has no trophy, and let sleep do the service that no banquet can, repair what the brilliance wears down. Tomorrow, the house will remember the night with pride. You will remember it with a breath, and the world moves on. For now, all that luxury goes back in the box, and you return to yourself. It's time to retreat. You extinguish the candles like closing a thick book without marking the page. The hall is left behind, shining for itself. Here, there is only cold stone, clean enough linen, and a bed that's doing its best. The jewels return to the box. The dress returns to gravity. The shoulders return to their place. Letting your hair down provides a relief that is priceless, or it has a price but no one is charging. Lying down, you review the day like counting the beads on a rosary of patience. Waking in a pretty bed that creaks. The basin of water that woke up before you. The cloths, the layers, the measured smiles. A garden that's beautiful until you hit the wall. Music that almost takes you away and then returns you. A contract signed and sealed with wine. Invisible work tied with a ribbon. Spoiler, it worked. You made it through another chapter with enough elegance to fool even the bronze mirror. Deep down, you can laugh. All of this, just to prove your position. Skin that hasn't seen the sun, hands without calluses, a dress that weighs more than an opinion, a smile that fits in a picture frame. And when the banquet ends, the etiquette disappears and the simple truth remains. Water, cloth, silence. The luxury of the era has that peculiar smell. Beautiful from a distance, laborious up close. You know this. And still, tomorrow, you'll repeat it. Because the wheel is turned by those who know how to pretend they aren't pushing. The bed exudes herbs that promise to ward off unwanted visitors and bring good dreams. Sometimes they work. Tonight, you accept the perfume placebo and close your eyes. The castle speaks softly. Wood creaks. Wind learns Latin in the crevices. Footsteps swear they are being discreet. Your body responds. Shoulders lower, feet unpinch. The spine remembers how to not be a spine for a few minutes. The head is still spinning slightly from the wine, but nothing a determined pillow can't solve. Before sleep, a quick reflection, the kind that doesn't spoil the rest. Being rich here isn't living above the ground. It's living on a stage. You feed the illusion, control the lights, organize the entrances and exits, and almost no one sees the strings. Almost. Those who see don't talk, those who talk didn't see, and you carry on because you have also learned the most medieval art of all, how to laugh on the inside without messing up your veil. If it's any consolation, and it is, maybe one day they'll invent ways to live with more comfort, water that falls without carrying a bucket, cutlery for every dish, beds that don't complain out loud. In the meantime, you have your portable manual for noble survival. Breathe, adjust, smile lightly, eat what's safe, promise what you can deliver, and save your strength for the hardest part. Sleeping well, write on script. Now, let the darkness do what no light can, disarm the spectacle. If anyone asks tomorrow how it went, you'll respond with the usual phrase, "Everything went well," and in your language, it will be the truth. Good night, tired listener. May sleep arrive with the steps of a well-trained maid. Adjust your invisible pillow and put out the candles of your thoughts one by one. Until next time, sleep with a tired story.